Hi, welcome back. My name is Victor Vogel, and now we're going to take some time to continue our kidnapping series. And in this particular segment, which we'll call part two, we're going to consider things about kidnapping that you really need to consider when you're traveling. So, wherever you're traveling, you want to make sure you take the time to think about these issues and research them in advance before you start traveling. So, let's get going. Okay, the first area you need to be thinking about relative to pre-planning your trip and about kidnapping, you're concerned about kidnapping, that's where we're focused, is the number of kidnappings. So let's kind of get over into that a little bit just so you understand. This is a map. It's 2013 map. Some of the statistical data we're going to cover in part three will update this a little bit, and you'll see increases in Africa and Russia and a couple of other places. But let's say we're going to Cancun, Mexico, and we're interested in going there for a vacation for 1 week into Mexico for a vacation along the beach areas down there. As you can see, Mexico is listed as a high kidnapping area. There are a lot of kidnappings that happen in Mexico, so you'll want to check with your State Department and other sources, like the source I gave you for kidnapping insurance and kidnapping professionals was Control Risk. You can find that in some of the descriptions, the link to their site on some of the descriptions, and they'll pull up more information about this, and we'll also see it in part three. I use some of their data to update kidnapping numbers. So we definitely want to make sure that we know that we're going into a hostile kidnapping area, and that's going to tell us to take more time in preparing and planning things like making sure we don't take credit cards that have our company name on them, like CEO of Exxon Oil. Okay, you don't. It's not someplace you'd want to be using that credit card. For various reasons, kind of like we said, people use desk clerks and other people who identify or target you based on whether they think you have money or not. You don't want to be wearing a lot of high-end jewelry into Mexico, and you probably don't want to journey outside of the all-inclusive resort area into any of the local communities in Mexico. Although it's really a unique culture, you'll get from the State Department certain areas where it's safe to travel, but they're very few and far in between within Mexico because of the types of kidnappings that happen there. You'll see a lot of numbers of kidnappings for there because, for example, they do a lot of express kidnapping and they do a lot of virtual kidnapping, and of course, as we learned from the first part one videos, the express is where they take you up to the ATM and drain your cards with cash using your cash number and ID, and the virtual kidnapping is where they simply contact you and tell you that they're going to hold your family a ransom. They know where they are. They'll kill them if you don't send them the amount of money. Most of the virtual and express kidnappings are for a lot less money than what you normally hear about or you see in the movies, millions of dollars. For example, one of the latest things was actually a scam out of Tijuana, Mexico, where they bought some numbers in San Diego and set up a telemarketing service, and they just started going down through calling people. And if people responded, they said, "Hey, look, your relatives in Mexico, have been kidnapped, and we've been contacted. We think you can get out of this for $500 to $1,000, but you need to send it to us immediately." And they just kept calling people to see if they would get any hits, and they got some hits out of that. They got several hundreds of thousands of dollars they collected off of that scam because of people who lived in America, particularly like in the D.C. or Chicago area, who had people in Mexico, who had relatives there. So that's just an example of one of the reasons why the numbers are higher in Mexico. The physical kidnapping is probably not going to be prevalent in the Cancun area, but you want to check with your State Department on that app. It's called Smart App, and you can find it on the iPhone store, and you need to load that. And you need to always, when you go into all areas, but particularly when you go into these high risk areas for kidnapping, you definitely want to make sure you have all of your information logged in and logged with the State Department, your itinerary, your passport numbers, your travel plan schedules, any information that's relative to the time you will be going to and coming back from, and time in country that you're going to be spending. Another thing that's interesting, you'll notice where the high areas are. It looks like Central and South America are going to be hot spots for a while. And then over on the Asian side, or close to the Mideast, of course, you have Afghanistan and Pakistan. We know Syria and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan, all those areas, because of the trouble we've had in those areas, and of course Yemen and the piracy that happens down around Somalia and North Africa. And of course, once we look at a new map here in part 3, you'll see almost all of Central and Northern Africa is rated high for kidnapping potential because of the uncontrolled areas and stuff. But the one that really struck me was India. India, most people don't think about as being high kidnap potential, but lately has sprung up as an area where kidnappings, and particularly these varieties of virtual and express kidnappings are becoming more prevalent there also. So the number of kidnappings, if you're going to go to a place that has a number of kidnappings in those areas, you most definitely want to make sure that you are covered, you've done your homework, you know where you're going, and you're pre-planning based on all the things we covered in the book up to this point. Your pre-planning is very, very important to ensure you're prepared to create a bad guy free zone where you're not going to find yourself in that situation that might be a kidnapping situation, but also if something did happen, that you would be prepared to cope with it faster and quicker and more effectively, because the faster the better in these scenarios. You don't want to be dragging things out over time. Time is not in your favor with a kidnapping. Okay, so the numbers of kidnapping is the first thing you want to be concerned about.